Alright guys, it's Scrappy again. I hope you're doing that and enjoying your day so far after FaZe's recent resurgence after a difficult start of the season. Dashy and Formal have given their perspective on what it means, the fact that FaZe are looking particularly good going into the major in Dallas after victory against OpTic last weekend in emphatic fashion, following that up against Cloud9, and they play G2 tonight. Dashy says he's hoping FaZe are starting to get a little bit delusional about their play, maybe how they did last year, and we know how that ended towards the end of the season. Very much enjoy to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. There was quite a lot of talk about the FaZe result last night because they handled business against Cloud9. We have seen lots of upsets over the last couple of weeks. It makes some sense. Major 1 qualifiers. We're not really sure where the teams stand right now. And, you know, teams are getting some surprising results, or at least pushing teams the distance. But FaZe are expected to beat Cloud9, and they came out and 3-0'd them without any difficulty at all. They play again tonight. We'll see how that transpires. Simp says, GG C9, 1-3-0. My teammate to 2 nice. G2 tomorrow isn't today. And, well, it's funny, isn't it, right? Because at the start of the season, questions about this FaZe team. And look, we shall see how they get on, lad. It's too early, really, to call anything decisively on this team, but it's definitely interesting timing. They went and got a Lurqxx, presumably because they felt like they needed somebody on the bench because Drazah wasn't playing so well, 04 even wasn't playing so well. Abuzah was okay at the time, but Simp has been basically godlike every single series he's played, to be honest, and he said before the season began, when the roster was getting built, look, I'm him, don't worry about FaZe, right? And so far that has proven to be correct, at least to a certain extent. But it does feel like, and look, maybe 04 was never particularly under threat from Lurqxx because of the roles, but even then, right, who knows? Drazah can run a sub, so if 04 was dropping the stinkies every series, then Drazah could potentially go to the sub and a Lurqxx could come in, who knows? But it was at least putting some pressure on the team to get better. It feels like that's what they've done over Christmas, New Year, better than anybody else has. And Simp remains the only player to have been positive in every single series so far. Of course, FaZe against OpTic, I think, probably put to get to the end Mercules run of this. Snoopy was nearly there, but he had a .89 against the Heretics, so that ended his streak for the season so far. So it's now only Simp. Every series that he's played, of which there have been, what, 5 so far, Simp's been positive in every single one. You would expect that to continue tonight as well. Won't last forever, of course, but arguably the player to watch in the game right now. I will say, to the credit of Drazah and to some of the other guys, there were some 8s going down. We don't see too many 8s nowadays, but there was some. We had Draz playing with Kremp, Dan, Ghosty and Huke, Kismet, Dante, Sib and Shotzzy, Neptune, presumably. These guys are getting into it, and Preb was also playing some Prides as well. So it's nice to see that there are at least some players actually grinding the game. But again, from Drazah's perspective, we know this guy grinds, and, well, he certainly was doing so over the last couple of weeks when he, let's be honest, kind of needed to, when his spot felt like it was under a little bit of pressure. We'll get back to FaZe in a second. Before we get there, just to mention that it was 3 years ago yesterday now that Scump officially announced his retirement from professional Call of Duty. It was a remarkable timeline, right, because Scump announced that he was going to announce his retirement before that season began in Modern Warfare 2. He said, this is my final year, we're going to give it our everything this season. And then, as we know, after a month or so into the game's life cycle, it wasn't really going to plan. Dashy was dropped in controversial circumstances. Scump said, you know what, I'm going to step down, Brandon, for you to rise up. So Scump actually talked about it. It feels, yeah, does it feel 3 years ago, right? I mean, the start of the Modern Warfare 2 season, since then we've had that whole dramatic Modern Warfare 2 year. Nuke Subline has taken the World Championship, then Modern Warfare 3, all the chaos that season brought, OpTic getting the victory in the end, Black Ops 6, OpTic winning again, and here we are 3 years on, and Scump says, yeah, it certainly doesn't feel like it. Feels like I've been retired like since yesterday, but certainly a big moment in Call of Duty, and we've seen other players retire recently. I mean, Clay, Slasher recently step away, as we know, Slasher stepped away. There's some controversy about what that means for the Ravens team, given how good they've looked in recent days with Exceed. As I say, we'll get back to that in the coming minutes, but let me talk about what happened between Scrap and Formal with Mercules in the conversation. So Scrap sat down with Hitch, did a great little episode here around the bar, talked about an awful lot of things, you know, giving Kenny some defense at least for the time being. We'll see how that runs until the major. But he was talking about Mercules and the state of affairs in challenges, and Foreman also gave his thoughts on this, because right now there's a lot of attention on challenges. Scrap's opinion is that a lot of that is because people are trying to find the next Mercules, and I get the logic there. I think there's other reasons why Challengers has been better this year. First of all, the CDL has actually supported it better this season. There's more tournaments in play, but it's not, I mean, I'm not going to give the CDL credit for this. It's mainly the fact that the game is a little better. People are more excited to play this year. We've got some old players returning. We've got some up-and-coming players enjoying themselves, but also support from Zuma and from OpTic with the Huntsman for the first time, from the Push Gaming guys and all of that. I think that's definitely brought more eyeballs. At the end of the day, people have always enjoyed and interested watching challenges, but it's more exciting when there is some sort of team being represented in a sense, right? Like when you've got some sort of organization in play that keeps things together, because in challenges for the last few years we've had Omit, we've had like, you know, SGP Syndicate and some of these other organizations, but that's kind of been it really. Now when you can look at, and obviously Zuma with the Stallions as well has probably been the key talking point of challenges the last couple of years, but now you've got Zuma with a couple of Stallions team, you've got OpTic with their roster. It just creates much better storylines and more interesting storylines to follow, rather than just a collective team of 4 that blows it up after one weekend and changes their roster for the next. Now that more of these teams are representing organizations, you get a little bit less of that chaos. So anyway, Formal talks about this and says, yeah, teams are jumping to Challengers players because of what happened with Mercules. He came into an 0-18 roster, won champs, changed the whole team. Everyone's looking for the next Merc. Right now, nobody's like him in Challengers. Look, Exceed, baby. Maybe Exceed is Mercules 2.0. He comes in. Obviously, it's a very different story with Exceed, but I'm excited to see the fact that Exceed's come back. You know, he's kept his head down. Obviously, he's talked some trash in recent years when he's not been signed when he feels like he should have done, and then he's come into the Pro League and dropped the occasional Burger King card. But the reality is he's making a difference. Look, I'm not saying Exceed is going to do with Ravens what Mercules did with OpTic, but Formal makes a fair point. The teams are looking down there. They're trying to find some serious talent. Scrap says there is no next Mercules down there in Challengers. And to be fair, it would be a shock if there actually was. Let's be real. Merc, just an unbelievable story. Difficult to imagine that that's possible again, at least in the near future. We're probably going to be waiting a few more years. But even if there's no Merc, you might get a very quality player who can turn a team around. Again, with Ravens, in recent days, we've kind of seen it. They've brought in Exceed. They've clearly got substantially better. Now, Exceed's no Mercules, precisely. He's also has not followed the same career arc as Mercules. Exceed has been around here for a very long time, but it's proven to an extent that a one-person change, the right one person for the type of team that it is, can make a big difference. And look, you can talk all you want about LAN COD and how Ravens are going to get on LAN and all this stuff, and we'll see how that transpires. And at the end of the day, LAN is what matters for winning events. But we know how COD is nowadays. Online arguably matters more. You can qualify for champs just off winning online qualifiers, even if you get bopped out of the majors every time. But at least if you make sure you're in the winners bracket, it gives you a better shot at the prize money and all these things. So online COD is very relevant. We know that one-man changes can turn teams around, so it's not particularly surprising that teams are looking down there to Challengers to try and find somebody who might not be Mercules, but might not be too far away.
A lot of the I do think a lot of the pro teams being so like quick on the trigger with replacing people and having bad online results and immediately jumping to like we need to replace with a Challengers player is because of Merc. I think Merc came into OpTic and he did something for them that can't really even be understood. Like, dude, this kid turned an 0-18 roster in the grand scheme of things to back-to-back winning their 2 biggest events of the year and carrying it on into the new game as well. He looks so good too. Like, it's everyone's looking for the next Merc, right? You never know if he's around the corner or if you're gonna get some. You know, I think he's kind of like an insane case, bro. Like, he's really good, dude. And he came straight from Challengers and stuff. It's kind of nuts. I think Merc is I don't think there's another player like Merc in the Challenger scene right now. I don't think that he's out there. I think some of these teams should be confident in the rosters they have, and at least.
If Challengers had all the eyeballs it does now, you would have been in Challengers for 3 months.
Yeah,
you would have been out.
I think this, like, recently, like, the Merc situation's a big one.
Yeah,
I think a lot of orgs are trying to, find the next Merc, trying to find the kid that comes up and is going to win everything. But I think also the reality of it is there's not a lot of them.
There's not, damn near none of them.
Exactly,
Yeah.
there's none of them. There's not a lot of people you're going to find that are going to come in and win champs in WC and then just, put a staple like that.
Yeah, it seems like the CDL, especially like MW19, Cold War era, people were complaining that all the old heads were getting the shots.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to bring anybody, you got to bring somebody back rather than, try somebody else new. Now it seems like the everybody wants somebody new.
The new crack guy.
Yeah,
Who's
right.
the new 18-year-old crackhead that's about to come and start
Exactly.
frying? So it's understandable, though. It's definitely understandable.
So you said the local scene was popping in Jersey even
Yeah.
when you were playing?
When I was going, there was my first event was when I was 11. About to be 12 or something.
Major right now. I think this is going to be a top 3 team, like for sure. They've kind of figured it out in all 3 modes, and they kind of put all the pieces together, right? Like you're putting all these like this weird little roster together at first. Like this is the FaZe trio split up for the first time. Like,
yeah, when I saw that roster, I was like,
I was like, I saw the pink. I was like, this ain't FaZe anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just didn't give me the vibe of like, that's Atlanta FaZe. You know what I'm saying? Like how we used to see it. Like this, the red fucking, the trio you always think about.
Yeah, they're pink now and shit.
No, it's like pink. It's like a little vibe. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's just a little different. So like,
This series can make them delusional.
for sure, yeah, dude. I mean, honestly, you guys might have fucked up. You might have created a fucking monster. I guess we'll find out. But
I'm hoping they're delusional.
Okay, yeah, I like that. Okay. You can buy that.
Yeah, Luca's like, damn, bro. And Luca has to lie.
After last
I've been
year,
there.
So,
I saw something I shouldn't have saw last
You're
year.
the
Let's
best
just say
player.
that.
okay, that's fair.
Good shit, boys.
Why are we zooming in on this?
I don't know, dude.
Interesting words from Dashy towards the FaZe Vegas team because they smoked him last weekend. FaZe beat OpTic. That was OpTic's first loss in a rather long time. FaZe have continued that momentum this week. And Formal's like, yeah, it might be a little bit concerning because now you've given FaZe the confidence that they can beat the reigning world champions. They look like right now FaZe the team to beat in the league. They're currently number 1 in the season standings so far. They're sitting at 4-1, 40 points. They have a chance to extend that record today. OpTic could well take back the number 1 seed by tonight because they're both 12-7 map count. It just depends what happens in terms of map count between FaZe and G2 Minnesota and between OpTic and, as we know, the Los Angeles Thieves, as we shall discuss here in a second. But what's Dashy's comments about, like, oh, kind of saw that last year type thing, kind of interesting. We saw FaZe this time last year. This is when they were starting to hit form. OpTic actually turned up to Major 1 in Madrid last year as the number 1 seed, as you guys will remember. But FaZe won that event. They then won the second event as well, and it looked like they were on course for a pretty dominant season. However, things changed. OpTic made a couple of changes. Thieves made some improvements. Thieves then won Major 3, Major 4, and we went to the World Championship, and neither of them were particularly close to Mercules and OpTic Texas. So, look, you don't want to peak too early, but we have seen before teams like New York, as I mentioned earlier, for Modern Warfare 2, they won the first event of the season back in December. Then they were pretty terrible for a few months. Then they came back at the end of the year and dominated again the final couple of events of that year, including the World Championship. You're not going to maintain an absolutely S-tier level all year. That's just how it's going to be. Obviously, you want to try and win everything. It's going to be very challenging to do that, but, you know, it's not a bad thing to be the best team in the game. The question from Dashy's side is, oh, look, it's early days. Yeah, FaZe might be looking really good right now. They've beaten us. Obviously, the Major could still be a very different story indeed. But then, you know, will they fall into similar patterns maybe that towards the end of the season they're not looking so good? We know that Drazah's performance at the end of last year wasn't great. He might have turned it around, it seems, over the last couple of series. We'll see if that can be maintained. But we've got 3 games tonight, and finally we've got a pretty good day. Like, these are very interesting games that I'm looking forward to. Certainly, look, G2 FaZe, I guess we'll see. People are obviously going to expect FaZe to dominate that one. The first series, though, is kind of fascinating because Boston are 2-3 after losing to Heretics. Cloud9 are 1-4. So if Cloud9 can win, they can get to 2 wins. There's still a chance there of winners. If Boston win, their map count's pretty good. They should be okay for the winners bracket. But of course, the point really is about the Los Angeles Thieves here, right? We're expecting FaZe to beat G2. If they do, G2 will be 1-5. They'll be cooked for winners. Surge are cooked as well, already at 1-5. So Boston, like, Thieves would probably quite like Boston to just beat Cloud9. I don't know, maybe actually that's a bad thing for Thieves because it puts another contender in, but at least for Thieves' perspective, I guess that demotes another team to a guaranteed losers bracket start. Thieves have 3 series left. They play today against OpTic. They play 2 important series next weekend. Even if they lose today, they'll be 2-3. They'll have a good opportunity to still get back to 3-4 or 3-4, 4-3. And that could well be enough depending on map count. But it's not like Thieves' map count is great. So, look, whatever happens here, Thieves are likely to be on the verge of either making it into winners or not. If we look at Thieves' games, they play OpTic today, and then their upcoming games next weekend are against Boston and Ravens. So, you know, both series that are for sure winnable, but not exactly guarantees the way that Thieves are presently looking. So Cloud9 Boston, G2 FaZe, and then OpTic Thieves. This is a key question in so many respects. OpTic, they lost to FaZe last weekend. They then went on to beat Surge, but we know that Surge are bottom of the league right now. Thieves, it's always been a fascinating series between OpTic and Kenny, and back in the day, Kenny would always find a way to get one over on OpTic somehow. I don't know. I think this series is going to be fascinating. I don't think I'm expecting it to be like a dominant OpTic win. If it is, then that's just, yeah, Thieves might be completely compromised at that point. We've just got to wonder what's happened this week in scrims behind the scenes at Thieves, because there were rumors that they wanted to make some moves already, blow up the roster, get rid of Kenny and all that. This series might be quite critical because they've had a whole week of practice. This is the only game that they're going to play this weekend. It's the final game of Sunday. And then if they get bodies, they've got to have a whole nother week of scrims to try and mentally reset for an important run to the major. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. I've got OpTic taking the win, but yeah, I know that some OpTic fans out there are expecting Kenny to start dropping a 1.3 and get out of nowhere. But hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.